Welcome to Iron and Ceramite Hobby Bashing. It is once again time for us to share some of the Mechanicum's forbidden knowledge.
Hello everyone, welcome to a quick update from Iron and Ceramite. This is in our Iron and Ceramite hobby bashing series. I just wanted to jump on really quickly and do a bit of a quick video about White Dwarf issue 472. It's just arrived. This is obviously the subscriber copy, so you've got this lovely artwork from the Gene Stealer cult, which is obviously a hot topic right now, just being released, and Adeptus Mechanicus on the front, so very nice. But that's not the reason why I wanted to jump on. What I actually wanted to talk about was some of the bits and pieces that are actually in here, because it kicks off the start of the Flashpoint Nachmund Campaign. So obviously we've had Octarius, and those that play the competitive match scene would have seen retrieve Octarius data, or ROD, coming about as a secondary objective. With the Nachmund campaign, we get those new additions. Now, I won't go into the spoilers that happen within the White Dwarf itself, but there's a load of narrative fluff about the Nachmund campaign. Some really good stuff in there. A bit about Calgar. Spoiler alert: he gets mortally wounded by Abaddon, but I think this is pre him crossing the Rubicon Primaris, so hopefully not too much of an issue there. And it does say that in there. There's also some cool stuff around Crusade, and actually having righteous warfare, so a whole new set of battle honors, agendas, and relics that you can pick if you go for a righteous crusade for your crusade list. It's not limited to those like the Templars or the Sisters. It is something you can choose for any crusade force, but it just means that you get a few different battle honors, agendas, and relics that you can pick from. Some pretty, as you'd expect, some pretty nice ones in there. Again, I'm not going to talk about that either. That's just a top line piece that I wanted to quickly cover off. The key thing that I actually wanted to go about that comes from the Nachmund campaign was actually, and again, it's well worth picking up the edition of White Dwarf for this, is for the new set of secondary cards that come with the actual magazine. So they're inserts, they're nice quality, they're as per what you'd expect from a GW deck if you bought them, apart from like the little burrs where they're punched out. But there's some key changes here. So these are for matched play. So if you play any standard missions from the core book, or from the chapter approved, which would include the new ones from the Octarius Flashpoint. And there will be some people that will also buy I think it's the Octarius or the Vigilus campaign expansion. You will be able to do that with Nachmund as well, is my understanding. But to get you going, I would recommend that obviously the White Dwarf is a good place to start. What's interesting is there are all of your standard objectives, so it's a useful deck to have anyway. So if you play match play, you play from the core book, you've got all of your standard cards in there anyway. So raise the banners, abhor the witch, deploy teleport homers to the last, grind them down, all in cards, broken down by whether they're shadow operations, no mercy, no respite, battlefield supremacy, or warpcraft. So then they're nice to have anyway. So that's good. But the thing I wanted to talk about, and hopefully these will be on screen shortly, is actually the progressive objectives that come with this, as well as the new retrieve data. So unfortunately, we don't have ROD anymore. Retrieve Octarius data. Obviously, if you're running Octarius, you can still do that. Still a secondary. It has a great acronym in ROD. The new one is retrieve Nachmund data, RND. Not quite as snappy, but we'll go through the changes that have come through. So therefore, obviously, these secondary objectives, these specific ones, are for use with Warzone Nachmund Grand Tournament Mission Pack. So I would expect that to come soon. When you select secondary objectives from Warzone Nachmund, you must select 3, at least 2 of which have to come from the Nachmund set. So that's quite interesting. Otherwise, they then have specific objectives for factions, which I think is quite interesting. I know you get specific objectives for factions in the codexes and supplements, but this I thought was quite interesting. So the ones that I was going to quickly cover was for the Emperor. That's the Imperial Guard or Astra Militarum. Score 1 victory point at the end of the battle round for each enemy unit that was destroyed during the battle round by an Imperial Guard unit, maximum of 3. Synaptic Insights, so the Tyranids. You keep a synaptic kill tally, reset this tally to 0 at the start of each battle round. Each time an enemy model is destroyed by a synapse model from your army, if it had a wounds characteristic between 3 and 5, add 1 to your kill tally. If it had wounds of 6 to 9, add 2, so on and so forth. Score 3 at the end of the battle if your synaptic kill tally is 4 or more. Cannot score more than 12, so that's quite a nice one. Path of Destruction Chaos Knights. So Chaos Knight specific one, score 1 victory point at the end of the battle round for each of the following conditions. 1 or more enemies were destroyed. 1 or more enemies were destroyed while 3 inches away from the deployment zone, and 1 or more units was destroyed by a model in your army that was wholly within your opponent's deployment zone. So effectively, if you're a knight, it's killing things that are in your deployment zone, close to your deployment zone, or in your opponent's deployment zone. The Long War for Chaos Space Marines, I think we've seen that one before, but you score 1 victory point each time a unit was within range of an objective marker at the start of the turn that was destroyed by a Heretic Astartes unit. And the start of the turn, you score 2 victory points if you control 1 or more objective markers that were controlled by your opponent at the start of the turn, and a Heretic Astartes unit from your army is within range of one of those. So a nice bit there. Chaos Demons, Malefic Terror. Each time an enemy model flees the battlefield, score 1 victory point. And each time an enemy unit is destroyed by an attack made by Chaos Demons unit in your army, before removing that last model from the battlefield, roll 2d6. If the result equals or exceeds the current leadership characteristic of that enemy model, score 1 victory point. You cannot score more than 4 victory points from this secondary objective per turn. Yield No Ground. This one's for the Imperial Knights players. Score 2 victory points if you control half or more of the total number of objective markers on the battlefield, and 1 or more Imperial Knights models from your army is within range of one of those objective markers, and score 2 victory points if no enemy units are wholly within your deployment zone. And then another one, score 1 victory point so long as no Imperial Knights models from your army ended that turn closer to your battlefield edge than they started the turn, and no Imperial Knights units from your army fell back during the turn. So a lot of blurb there to go through in that regard in those ones. Now, I apologize for any of the players of those factions. You've probably seen those. They're probably just variations of objectives that you know and love. Quite interesting for players of other factions because, as I said, I've never seen those before, so interested to see when they come up. But the real one, the one that everyone's interested in, is retrieve Nachmund Data, as this is an update to the loved across the tournament scene, retrieve Octarius Data. So they've updated it a bit. It's not the same as Rod. Rod, obviously, you just had to be in a table quarter, 6 inches away from the other table quarters, so you could go in, you'd bounce around, you'd try and get to each corner, and as long as you were in there and you completed the action, you'd retrieve Octarius Data. What they've changed about it, I'll read it out from the card, but that will leap as soon as you know it. So it's part of Shadow Operations. 1 infantry or biker unit from your army can start to perform this action at the end of the movement phase if it's wholly within a table quarter that has not had a servo skull retrieved by your army, and it is more than 6 inches away from any other table quarter. So quarter. This action is completed at the end of your turn, provided the unit attempting is still within the same table quarter. If this action is successfully completed, roll 1d6, subtracting 1 from the result if the unit that completed the action has the troop's battlefield roll. If the result is less or equal to the number of models currently in that unit, that table quarter is said to have had a servo skull retrieved by your army, and you add 1 to your retrieved data tally. At the end of the battle, score 4 victory points if your retrieved data tally is 2, score 8 victory points if your tally is 3, or score 12 victory points if your tally is 4. So makes sense. What they've changed is that element of rolling 1d6. So what that means is, whereas before you could have one single model that pops up in the corner, retrieves data, and disappears again, now if you've got a big blob of 10 troops, they're going to get it automatically, because you can't roll under the number of models 1d6 with -1 modifier. So it's encouraging you to have bigger units doing it. What it also means is, if you're a bike unit, if you're using a biker to zip around and try and get it, typically in a unit of 3, or at least that's what a lot of Marine players tend to have. If you've got that in a unit of 3, and you get to that unit, you're not a troop, so you're going to have to roll a d6, and on a 4, 5, or 6, you're actually going to fail, because you have to roll 1d6, and it has to be less or equal to the number of models in that unit. And because bikes, I don't think bikes have the troops keyword, on a 4, 5, or 6, you'd fail that. Same ways that if let's say you had a group of 5 Reavers, now at the start of the battle, you would automatically do it because you get a -1. So you'd roll that very easily, because you'd have 5 in the unit. -1, you can't fail. But as the battle goes on, let's say that unit gets peppered, they only end up with 2 or 3, and they're on the table edge trying to retrieve data. They might succeed in the action, but then you actually have to roll off. And if you've only got, let's say, 3 in the unit, you would need to roll a 1, 2, or 3. You do get the -1 because they're troops. So you'd roll the dice. On a 1, 2, 3, 4, you succeed. On a 5 or 6, you'd actually fail. So it's interesting, because it puts a bit of jeopardy in that retrieving data actually being a banker. So it'll be interesting to see, who takes it now, whether it comes up in tournament play the same way as retrieving Octaria's data did. But it's an interesting update, and I wanted to jump on and just quickly share that with you all, so that you can go away, maybe try and play it yourselves and see how it works. But as I said, what I would really recommend is picking up a copy of issue 472. It is 472, because you get those cards, and you get a load of nice fluff from the Nachmund release. I know they're not for everyone, but there's a nice bits in there, and there's some very cool artwork. Calgar lives, very nice. But hopefully, if you do pick it up, it'll be interesting. Let me know how, if you do decide to play the new collect data, retrieve data. I think I will give it a go in one of my next battles, see how it works out. But it just puts a bit of jeopardy in there for so it's no longer the slam dunk it once was. Anyway, this has been hobby bashing as part of Iron and Ceramite. You can find us on all the YouTubes. Search for Iron and Ceramite across any social channel that you particularly are fond of, and you'll find us on there. Join in, let us know what you think, and we do appreciate feedback.
As always, we would like to thank you for listening to our Iron and Ceramite podcast. If you liked us, then you can also find us on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and any other good podcast services. Just remember, in the grim darkness of the far future, there is only war.